Before we go any further, I'd like to take a minute to discuss how to add comments to your code and why it's a good practice to do so. It's very easy to comment your code, but many developers don't bother even though comments are so useful. A comment is just a line of text that won't be parsed by the compiler. A comment will only be seen while the app is in development. For example, you could put some notes to another developer who you're working on the application with. Those notes would only be available to the other developer while the IDE is open. When the code is compiled, the comments will be skipped over. We have a couple of different options for including comments, so let's take a look at each of them. First, we can make a single line comment. Enter 2 forward slashes, and anything you write after them on the same line will become a comment. Notice that the comment is green. All comments will be green. Like I said, this is a one-line comment, so only the text on this line will be green. If I hit enter before the word comment, this is a single line is still green, but comment is now black. C# thinks that the word comment is code to be compiled. If you wanted both lines to be a comment, you can put another set of forward slashes on the second line, or you can use a multiple line comment. For a multiple line comment, start with a forward slash and follow it with an asterisk. At the end of the commented section, place an asterisk followed by a forward slash. Anything inside of these will be considered a multi-line comment. You can comment out multiple lines with this button, comment out the selected lines. Just select an area that you want to be commented out and click this button. If you want to undo that, you can click the button next to it, uncomment the selected lines. These buttons will add or remove the double slash, one-line comments before each selected line. It won't wrap them with the multiple line comments we looked at a minute ago. So now that we know how to add comments to our code, let's talk about why you would want to. When you're coding an app, all the code you write will make sense. It will be fresh in your mind why you wrote a certain line and what that line does. But what if you came back to that app a year later? Would you still remember what each line does? There can be thousands of lines of code in an application, and it can be difficult to remember what you were thinking a year earlier. Also, it can be useful to comment code that another developer may use. If you and I were both coding an app, you may not know what I was thinking with a particular line of code. I can put a comment explaining that code so that you'll know exactly what it is for. Let me give you an example. Typically, when coding, you want the code to be easy to understand, so I would advise naming variables more descriptively than I'm about to, but this is just to show why comments can be so useful. Let's say you had an app where the user registers and then has access to the program. You could have various info stored about the user, their name, their location, etc. Let's say you wanted to know how old their account is. So you may create a variable called age, which is where we'll store the age of the account. That makes sense now since I've just coded it. But if I handed this code off to another developer, they would probably think that age refers to the user's age, not the account's age. Obviously, we would rather name the age variable something like account age. But for this example, we're just going to add a comment that says, this represents the age of the user's account. Now, if I send this code to you, you can read the comment and know exactly what I was thinking when I wrote it. One last reason to use comments is while troubleshooting your code. Let's say something isn't working in your code. You may want to comment out a section of that code so that it won't be parsed. You can then recode that section, trying to fix the error. You don't want to lose the code you wrote the first time around until you know that the new code actually works. As you can see, comments can be very useful, and you should use them to fully comment your code so that it's obvious what you're doing with each line. With that being said, you don't need to overdo them. If you have a variable called username, you don't need a comment above it saying this is the user's name. That's redundant and just a waste of time. Make sure your comments aren't that simple, but don't be afraid to use them. They won't change anything about your final app, it won't run slower, and it won't be a larger file size when you compile the program.